One storm, one blinding flash, and by sunrise, the whole neighborhood's got a dinosaur problem. The end of Oak Street drops a T-Rex on suburbia and just lets it eat. Welcome to Scary World, where I walk you through the best, the worst, and the downright disturbing. I'm Arturo Padilla.
Hi.
Let's get into it. One night, a cosmic event rips Oak Street out of 1980s suburbia and drops it somewhere prehistoric. Now the Platt family has to survive a neighborhood full of things that eat people and each other.
God's not gonna let us die here.
Greg, you only go to church at Christmas and now you're telling the kids God's looking out for us? What about the people who are out there getting eaten?
The first category is production.
Told you I'd make a movie someday. Huh?
The End of Oak Street was directed by David Robert Mitchell. For horror fans in the know, this name might sound familiar. He's the same guy who gave us It Follows back in 2014. It's not one of my personal favorites, but it's a modern horror staple nonetheless. This was a definite surprise coming from him because this is a hard left turn. It Follows was lo-fi, patient, and built entirely on practical craft. Oak Street, on the other hand, is a big swing studio creature feature produced by J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot, with Warner Brothers footing the bill. With all that said, this movie looks great. Mitchell brought in his It Follows cinematographer, Michael Dulakis, who also shot Jordan Peele's Us. He switches between two totally different modes without ever losing you. You get these quiet sit-in-the-kitchen close-ups where the whole frame is just a face trying to make sense of something impossible, and then you get these flowing action sequences that glide. No shaky camera nonsense, no cutting every half second so you can't tell what's happening. You always know where you are, where the exits are, and where the thing with the teeth is. The practical sets deserve a lot of credit too. The streets itself, the houses, the yards, it's all real, which matters a lot here because there's a ton of CG stacked on top of it. So having something physically there for the actors to run through and hide behind and get thrown against is what keeps this whole thing grounded. It balances everything out. And the movie score is absolutely awesome. Michael Giacchino, the same dude who's done Spider-Man Brand New Day, The Batman, and The Incredibles, just to name a few bangers under his belt, makes sure that the music never lets up, and it helps you stay immersed in the action. The editing also helped the pace and the tension stay at a high level. John Axelrad cut this thing beautifully. He knows when to hold a shot and when to move on quickly. That's the part that a lot of people miss. A bunch of movies think that tension is fast cutting, but fast cutting is just noise. Axelrad will let you sit in a shot just a beat longer to let you start scanning the edges of the frame to see what's coming, and then he'll cut. That's why an hour and 39 minutes feels like it's moving without ever feeling rushed. The production of this movie is perfectly executed from top to bottom, and for that, The End of Oak Street gets a 2 out of 2 for production. I really enjoyed the execution of this movie. The technicality of everything was just spot on, and the camera work was awesome, especially during those flowing action sequences. You get a lot of tracking shots that just follow his family running through the entire neighborhood, and it looks awesome. The score also helps with everything. It sounds like a Spielberg-esque kind of score, and it helps with the action, it helps with the terror, it helps with those big dinosaur moments. They did a great job with this one. The next category is story.
Second act needs more.
David Robert Mitchell wrote this himself, and the concept is pretty awesome. It starts off with a sci-fi angle as a setup and turns into a full-blown creature feature. That mix is a lot of fun, and it's something we don't get very often these days. I had a good time with the story, but you do have to bring some suspension of disbelief with you in order to get through this movie. There are moments where the how and the why of this thing do not hold up if you press on them, but the saving grace is that the pace is tight and the runtime is short, so you generally don't have the time to sit there pondering before another dinosaur or two are thrown your way. It keeps moving and it keeps you moving along with it. Where it did start to lose me a little bit was the third act. That's where the viewer logic starts to kick in a little more. Characters start making choices and you start questioning those decisions. And once that door is open, it's a little hard to close. It does get a little frustrating, to be honest. It pulled me out more than once, and in a movie this lean, you feel every second you spend outside of that bubble. But all that said, the ending does make up for all of it. It definitely sticks the landing and you walk out satisfied. For story, End of Oak Street gets a 1 out of 2. The concept is pretty awesome. You get sci-fi with a creature feature attached to it, but then there are some bumps along the way that start making you think a little bit more about the story and the hows and the whys. But like I said, The pacing is tight and the runtime is short, so the story doesn't really allow you to stop and think until after the movie is done. The next category is ensemble.
She's an actress. She's acting.
The cast was pretty solid. Anne Hathaway carries this movie flat out. She's playing the suburban mom, Denise Platt, and she is the glue holding this whole thing together. She does a great job portraying someone who's terrified and furious and just trying to keep her kids breathing. She's got a stack of movies out this year, and she's not phoning this one in. The rest of the cast fills out well. The young actors, Maisy Stella, who plays the daughter, and Convery, who plays the son, manage to keep up with Hathaway. They do some real nice work, and they're not there to just scream and get rescued. They're actually carrying some scenes, which is commendable. Ewan McGregor rounds out the family as Greg, the dad, and he's fine. He's not bad, he's just nowhere near the level of his co-star. And honestly, he's not at the level of the kids either, which is a strange sentence to say out loud about McGregor. When your young supporting cast is out acting Obi-Wan, that's a gap you feel every time the movie cuts to him. And for that, End of Oak Street gets a 1 out of 2 for ensemble. As I said, the cast is well-rounded. They're pretty solid. Anne Hathaway is the one carrying this movie from beginning to end. If it were not for her performance, this would fall pretty flat, honestly. And that's a testament to her and her talent. The next category is horror.
Is it scary?
This movie delivers the goods in this department. We get an unexpectedly high body count for a PG-13 movie. This flick is definitely not shy about thinning the herd. People die, and they die in ways that made the whole theater react. And that was an appreciated surprise. When a big studio creature feature actually commits like that, that's a reason to get excited because you stop being able to guess who is safe in this movie. Now, this thing is quite heavy on the CG. That could have been a huge detriment to the entire movie, but the special effects team did a great job making the dinosaurs look as realistic as CG allows. I do wish they'd snuck in some practical dino heads in here, at least for the close-up shots. There are several instances where this thing is right on top of somebody, filling the entire frame, and that's where you'd want something physically in the room with the actor. That's where you can feel the difference every single time. It's no Jurassic Park. That said, the dino violence is fun. It's really fun, and it looks awesome too. Gnarly and brutal in the ways it needs to be, which helps the CG gripe take a backseat. And for that, End of Oak Street gets a 2 out of 2 for horror. There is a lot of carnage in this movie, a surprising amount, especially for a PG-13 movie. It was very appreciated, it was very unexpected, and it really made this movie pop. If it were not for that fact, we'd be having a completely different conversation. The last category is legacy.
All right, now make up your mind.
This was a great looking movie with a cool story, a solid cast, and it was genuinely fun. Yes, it's CG heavy, but the dinosaurs look good, and what's on the screen holds up very well. And I think it'll hold up on a rewatch too. I was lucky enough to see this with a decent sized audience, and everybody was engaged the entire way through, laughing, jumping, groaning out loud at the dumb decisions these characters make. And I mean that as a compliment. It's a legit theater experience. That's the kind of vibe you want on a summer night at the movies. And something that generates that kind of room response doesn't just quietly disappear. It carries on to the home watches too. And for that, End of Oak Street gets a 2 out of 2 for legacy. This was a fun movie theater experience. I was surprised at how much my family and I, as well as the rest of the audience, enjoyed this watch. Everyone was very engaged throughout the entire movie. Everyone was actually in it to win it, just like this family was. And that means a whole lot. You're paying a good amount of money these days to have a good time at the movie theater, and this one comes through.
Task, can you tell me what time it is?
And now it's time to add it all up. For production, The End of Oak Street gets a 2. For story, it gets a 1. For ensemble, it gets a 1. For horror, it gets a 2. And for legacy, it gets a 2, bringing the total up to an 8 out of 10. The End of Oak Street is a big swing that connects. David Robert Mitchell took his horror sensibility and pointed it straight at a studio creature feature. And even though the CG isn't the direction I'd have picked, the craft underneath it is legit. It looks great, it sounds great, Anne Hathaway is doing some really nice work, and the dinosaur carnage delivers on the promise. The story's got some holes in it, and the third act will test your patience, but it's short, it's fast, and it sticks the landing. Go see it in a theater, go see it with the crowd. That's the version of this movie that works. The End of Oak Street is playing now at a theater near you. Go check it out. I'm Arturo Padilla, and remember, it's a scary world out there, but I am here to walk you through it. See you next time.
Hello, I just wanted to say goodbye.